So evidently on this show, we need to stop talking poorly about the Detroit Lions because we spent a majority of the end of last show talking about how we weren't confident that the Detroit Lions would win on Monday night, and they proved us wrong in a big way, bullying the Baltimore Ravens en route to a 38 to 30 victory. That was really like with a garbage time TD for the Ravens too, so it was a lot even better of a win than the scoreboard would indicate. Welcome in to the Payne and Drain show. You can find the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain, and if you're new here, welcome in. Make sure to hit like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on podcasting platforms. We've had a ton of support lately. I'm your host, Zach Payne, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Alex Drain. You can find us on Twitter at ZachPayne41 and Alex_Drain. Alex, how are we feeling following that surprising effort?
Yeah, it was really surprising in some ways. I expected the Lions to hang in there. I didn't think it would be a second blowout against Baltimore after last time, but certainly a great performance. I had a thought about where this ranks in the best Dan Campbell regular season wins. That framing is a little tricky because you're weighing like the stakes versus the performance, where like for example, the game against Minnesota in 2023 when they clinched the division, like the stakes were great and the feeling was great. It was not a very great game or
The Nick
performance,
Mullins
and
400-yard game.
where they hang on by a thread with Melifonwu getting the late interception. So that part's tricky, but just in terms of just pure great performances, crisp play on both sides of the ball, right at the top in the Campbell era, right at the top in my lifetime, honestly. I mean, it's a pretty short list when you adjust for quality of opponent and how well they played. Honestly, one of the other top ones is the game we talked about a couple weeks ago with the Matt Patricia game against New England, right? Like that was a similar kind of vibe. Like just a great performance in a primetime game against a really good team, and it feels really good to watch that.
Yeah, I know we kind of had this like little conversation about this offline, and I had counted because my first reaction was, well, no, the best win of the Dan Campbell era was the either the divisional round against the Bucks because that was the furthest the Lions had progressed in the playoffs in a long time, or the win against the Vikings in Week 18 last year because of the stakes of two 14-win teams for the North for the one seed, which the Lions had also not gotten. And so for I know I saw people talking about the Chiefs game a few years ago in 2023 is another one that they put rank fairly highly, but you had put the Packers week 17 in 2022 as your top answer for the in recent memory at least. So I don't know. There's been a lot of good wins. I think the most important thing is if we look at the Lions' biggest wins since like 96 or since like 95 or something. Are the top five all Dan Campbell wins?
Probably. I
Like in the
they
last
didn't
30 years, it's probably all condensed to the last like four.
Yeah, like they didn't beat a lot of really good teams in the like Stafford era. They, had the Jim Schwartz era, they were winning crazy games like that. The Monday Night Football game against the Bears when they went to 5-0 in 2011. The Bears weren't very good that year. That like they were winning kind of crazy games against middling teams a lot of the times. In terms of actually like we're just a good football team winning a good game, most of them are going to be in the Campbell era for sure. And this was one of the best. I mean, comparing it to that Chiefs game, I like this one more because I know everyone at the time, everyone got riled up about the Tirico like asterisk thing, which was a really dumb comment from him at the time. But there is an element of truth that it did feel like we were kind of gifted one a little bit. It was a great, it was good to win the game, don't get me wrong, but there is a little bit of like Kelsey didn't play, Chris Jones didn't play. When two of the top three players in the opposing team don't play, it goes from we're a huge underdog trying to pull the stunner to like we need to take advantage of this. I remember that was my feeling going into that Chiefs game. Like it was a bit of a feeling of like, wow, this is a real opportunity. We can win this game. We should win this game. And there was also a little more randomness, I feel like, in that game. Remember the tip drill, branch, pick six? Like there was some
Yep.
weird stuff that kind of happened. This didn't feel weird. This felt like the Lions should have won by more. And the Ravens, honestly, yes, they had a couple injuries, but it's not like they were ravaged and not to the extent that the Chiefs had in that game. So I think this one just was really an impressive performance.
Also, the injury narratives are so tough because After last year, when because we went in 2023 and people were given the asterisk talk after the Chiefs win, where was that energy for the Lions against the Bills last year? The Lions did not have Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil got hurt. Alex Anzalone just come back. It's like half the defense is hurt. Oh, we're going to talk about asterisks with that? No. The Commanders beat the Lions in the playoffs. Are we going to talk about how the Lions only lost because they were hurt? No, that's not how it works. Injuries are a part of the sport. And yes, Matabukwe being out is a massive loss for the Ravens. That does not, like, it's not the Lions' fault that rookie Mike Green got put into the dirt by Penei Sewell 45 times. It's not the Lions' fault that Roquan Smith was getting blocked by Khalif Raymond or Kyle Hamilton having a terrible game. Like that's the Lions just played they played their brand of football. And the contrast from week one was something that was brought up on air after the game. And the way I was looking at it is we talked in week one how a lot of the things that happened in that game were the Packers just playing their brand of football and the Lions struggling to establish their identity. This game felt like the Lions were playing their brand of football and Baltimore was just trying to adapt to it throughout the game. And what you got as a result was the Lions bullying them. We'll talk about the offense in a second, but for over 200 yards on the ground, which great to see the run game back in full swing. Shout out David Montgomery for helping with that. The rookie guards are looking fantastic. Tate Ratledge just posted one of the best PFF grades for a rookie, beating Christian Mahogany's from last year. So the Lions offensive line seems like it's fully back to being the engine that drives this offense. And the Lions were controlling the trenches, which is something that they preach and that they want to do on both sides of the ball. And that's the result, man, is the Ravens, who are notorious for playing bully style of football, got run out of their own building.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how teams can look week to week and you have the contrast. Like if you watch just the first game, you'd be like, wow, the Packers are going to go 17 and 0. This team looks unbelievable and the Lions are washed. And then fast forward a few weeks, and the Lions play a great game against Baltimore, and the Packers kind of face plant a little bit against Cleveland. And it just goes to show that each week is a new week. And I think through 3 weeks, we can look back at that first game and say that the Packers played a great game, one of the best performances I've seen them have in a while. And the Lions played a really poor game in that one. And each week it's been getting a little bit better, and this was a much, much better performance from Detroit.
Yeah, so jumping into the offense now that we've kind of talked about the service level. And again, the offensive line is the story of this game, the way that they were able to just dominate the Ravens up front. Penei Sewell posted a 99.3 run blocking grade, which, if that sounds high to you, it should, because that is the highest run blocking grade a player has had since 2006. I don't know if that's the year PFF was founded or started tracking those kind of things, but the highest single game run blocking grade in in 20 years, which is incredible. He's the highest rated offensive tackle on the season so far, despite a mediocre week one. And obviously, when Penei Sewell is playing like that, it makes life easier for Tate Ratledge, who has quickly overcome the mental errors from week one and established himself as a quality starting guard right away. He's an absolute road grader in the run game. He's been very solid in pass protection. Mahogany's been solid. Decker's been solid. There was one little miscue where Decker misread a disguised blitz that the Ravens were sending, and he ended up letting Odafe Owe just get a free shot on Jared Goff. However, the Ravens did not register a sack in this game. Second week in a row, the Lions have not given up a sack. And that's the first time in like 57 games that the Ravens have failed to register a sack. So bravo to the offensive line, for as much as we still have our reservations about Graham Glasgow. Anytime you don't give up a sack, it's kind of hard to complain too much.
Yeah, it was a total reversal in pass protection for the Lions compared to that first game. Ratledge, in particular, with how clean he was in this one. You watch the first game against Green Bay, and you'd think to yourself, like, this guy can't pass protect at all. It was a really poor performance, and just been getting steadily better. And as a whole, just a really nice showing from the Lions' offensive line. Like, people will talk about the run blocking aspect, but they were really solid in pass protection too, and that gives the Lions offense what they need to flourish.
Yeah, and the Ravens were throwing all kinds of simulated pressures and disguised pressures and blitzes, and the Lions were handling all of it very well. And anytime there was a little bit of pressure, Jared Goff, as he does, very good job navigating the pocket for as immobile as he is. He did have a scramble and a QB sneak in this game. He also had a play he should have scrambled on and instead did a sideways jump pass into the dirt. We're going to ignore that because that was hard to watch. But aside from that, Goff was obviously very good, and we'll talk about him in a second. The star of the game, though, David Montgomery. Now, we've talked over the first few weeks about how Jahmyr Gibbs just hasn't quite been himself, hasn't quite had it to start the year. But the great thing about having two quality running backs is when one of them doesn't necessarily have it, the other one might. And in this game, that was certainly the case. Not that Gibbs was bad, he's just not been playing to the standard he sets for himself. But David Montgomery, just unbelievable. 12 carries over 150 yards, also added a reception for 13 yards, which that reception he caught it for like 4 or 5 yards and then turned to the sidelines, broke a tackle and just made something out of nothing there. A couple of touchdowns for him as well. He was just absolutely fantastic, and he has been a lot more decisive as a runner so far this season compared to Gibbs. He's obviously better at breaking tackles and dragging defenders for extra yards there. So absolutely fantastic. What did you like about the running back dynamic in this one?
Starting with Gibbs, it just continues to feel like he isn't getting to some degree the same level of blocking that Montgomery's been getting in this game. It was just one of those things where the Gibbs carries, the blocking just really wasn't there, and Montgomery got, generally speaking, a little better blocking. Gibbs continues to miss a couple cuts here and there, I feel like, when I review the tape, but not severe. It's just story was Montgomery was just so good in this game. And he breaks off the long run, and most of the long run isn't really him. He gets great blocking up front. Like he's just clean to the basically to the safety. Safety doesn't take a super great angle on it, and he makes the one miss, and then he's just off and running. But his really hard style of running stood out, particularly on that catch that you noted. Like that that was not a carry, but it was a really impressive play, weaving back outside, navigating, dragging guys forward for extra yards. In the middle portion of this game, because those first two drives, they're really throwing the ball a lot on those first couple of drives. After that, they start running it, and that becomes the meat of their offense. And it felt like they were getting 6, 7 yard chunks really consistently. And he was a big part of that. The interior offensive line gives him the push, and then when he hits the linebacker at 4 or 5 yards, that's an 8 yard carry because he's just so strong. He's going to keep those legs churning, always falls forward. And that was what allowed the Lions to do what they did in this game. When you get 7, 8 yard chunks on the ground almost every time, it's really hard to stop. And it was just a beautiful tandem performance between the line up front and then Montgomery's ability, plus the long run. Just brilliant day from him.
Yeah, and as far as the difference between the two backs, part of it has to be schematic. The Lions were running a lot of duo with Montgomery in the second half,
Yep.
especially, and a lot more of these concepts where the guards are kind of tag teaming a block and then working to the second level to help Montgomery get through the linebackers. Whereas Gibbs is getting a lot more outside zone style carries where he just has to read and react. And I think this is where the decisiveness comes in a little bit more because there were a few plays where Gibbs had a hole and he just was kind of hesitating a little bit or not cutting and like getting into gear quick enough. There was one play where he rattled off like an 8 or 9 yard run, but he still was like half second late to hitting the gap. And if he had just run a little bit more decisively, he might have been able to turn that to 12, 13. So I do wonder because if we go back to last year, obviously Montgomery was hurt towards the end of last year, and Gibbs was getting every style of run, and he was thriving doing everything. Whereas this year, it seems like when he's in the game, it's a little bit more predictable as to what the Lions are going to do. And you talked about the 6, 7, 8 yard chunks the Lions were getting. It didn't start that way when Gibbs, well, like on the first drive in a bit, Gibbs had 7 carries for like 8 yards. It was a slow start to the day for the run game, but it really felt like once Montgomery came into the game and with the way the offensive line was playing, they were really wearing down the Ravens front and that the game was tied going into the fourth quarter. It was a close game, and then the Lions just seemed to exert their will over an exhausted Ravens team. And part of that, obviously, as we talk about exerting their will, comes down to the two long drives they had in this game, 198 yards, 196 yards. The 98-yard drive, one of the more impressive ones we've seen in recent memory, where the Lions took 11 minutes off the clock. The Ravens only possessed the ball for 10 minutes in the entire first half. I It is exactly what we said they had to do is control time of possession. And I'm not gonna lie, when that drive happened, that was just art. That was beautiful.
Yeah, Army drive right there, just plodding your way down the field little bit after little bit. And there were a couple plays on that drive that really kind of kept it going, right? They had a couple big conversions in particular. Like there's the 3rd and 7 deep in their own territory where Montgomery has a nice pass pro moment to allow Goff to find the time, then fits a nice ball in there. There were just a couple moments early on that got it moving. And then once they crossed the 50-yard line, they were pretty much golden from there. And as a whole in this game, as you talk about with the run stuff, when they were threatening laterally, there wasn't a lot of success in this game. Generally speaking, they ran out of that Maryland eye with the four guys in the backfield a couple times. It didn't work any of
It
the
was
times.
horrible. I hated every
the
to the point where every time I saw that formation, I was like, stop. Just stop. It's not gonna work.
the first time they run it, they have like a toss play, and just no one sets a block. Like they just go like 0 for 5 on the blocks on that play, and it's gobbled up for a TFL.
I don't know if you watched that play back. Watching Taylor Decker on that rep is so funny because there's three people he could possibly block, and he blocks none of them. And then he turns around and is like, well, guess I missed that one, and Gibbs just gets blown up.
Yeah, and again, there was just some like bad luck with Gibbs early on in this game because like the second drive, they have the fiasco with the throwback screen, which we can talk about in a second. But then that next play, they have it blocked up pretty well, where it's like an outside zone with a crosser sort of play, and everyone has it good except Ratledge gets driven way back, and he like bangs into Gibbs, and it prevents Gibbs from turning the corner. And if he gets to the edge, they've got it blocked up. So there was just kind of like what we talked about a little bit in the Green Bay game, where it's like you can have four guys blocking well on a play, and if the fifth guy is getting whipped, that can be the end of the play right there, and it doesn't really matter what the other guys do. And so they just weren't quite firing on all cylinders there. And then I think on that long drive, once they got across the 50, they start paving the Ravens for the first time. At that point, it became pretty clear what they just needed to do, and there was very, very little gap stuff in terms of pulling guards. Right, you have like they're really going duo inside zone the whole time. They ran one or two plays in which anyone pulled the entire game. It was all just pretty simple, stay in front, because they were just mauling those defensive tackles, absolutely smoking them. No issues getting up to the linebackers and pretty easily blocking the linebackers at that. And so once you can figure out you're going to get 6-7 yards a pop on the ground, you don't need to do anything else. Do that, build a little play action pass off of it, and you are in real good shape. And when the offense sputtered in this game, right at the end of the first half, biggest issue was they weren't able to run it.
Yeah.
That was the difference. When they were running the ball, there was nothing the Ravens could really do to stop them once they got through that first drive and a half.
Yeah. And, we've been talking about the offensive line so much. The wide receivers were also great blocking in this game. Amon-Ra had a couple nice seals on the goal line. Khalif Raymond, I mentioned, had a couple nice blocks on Roquan and Kyle Hamilton. He had one on Kyle Hamilton, I believe, that sprung the 72-yarder for Montgomery. JMO downfield blocking. He's always been good at that. He's always been great at catching up. Like he'll make a block and then catch back up to the plate to try to make another block. He had the one on Marlon Humphrey, I believe, on Montgomery's touchdown at the end where Montgomery breaks it and JMO's like 20 yards downfield blocking a guy to allow Montgomery to get the edge there. So just a total team effort from the Lions to block everyone that was wearing black that night. And it led to one of the best rushing performances they've had as a team in recent memory. Again, 225 yards, I believe, on the ground. Spectacular. And that's not to take anything away from the past game either. Jared Goff, what more is there to say about him than what we said last week? He's fantastic. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, if not the most accurate. And that is perfectly. You look at the touchdown to St. Brown to tie the game at 21 and the 4th and 2 at the end. Two plays where St. Brown has half a step on a defender. And if the throws are anything less than perfect, it's not going to work out. And Goff puts it on the money both times. I don't know if there is a quarterback wide receiver duo aside from like Burrow and Chase that are this in sync with each other.
Yeah, it's probably a pretty short list. Goff was just dealing in this game. Really, really good. You talked about navigating the pocket earlier, moving his feet, all that kind of stuff. Just really on point. And the throws to St. Brown are great. A couple throws to Laporta are great. He was really steady finding JMO on that first drive. It's kind of interesting how JMO's involved on the first drive, then he goes away. We don't really see him again the rest of the game. And
Well, it's
Laporta had
because
a
the
lot of
Ravens are taking away the deep shot after that. They're like, oh no, we can't let this guy beat us. And like you saw throughout the game, like JMO was clearing out the safety so well. There was the one play that was supposed to go to Tesla that Nate Wiggins made a great play on, where the Ravens have like three guys that end up having to drop because JMO's threatening over the top and Tesla just unable to win that rep. But it's not
yeah,
really
that's
his fault.
one of those games where you need to like watch all 22 to see the ways that JMO is clearing out space for the intermediate game. But Goff just really fabulous in this game, and St. Brown, that connection is just so incredible because Goff can throw it in a tiny window, and St. Brown's going to get some separations to create at least a tiny window on almost every route, and he's going to catch it when the ball comes. Like it's just so reliable. Like you see on that fourth down, and we find out after the fact it didn't really matter because they get the 5 yard penalty anyway. But you see it, and it's like that's a really good ball, but the ball's out a little bit, right there, and there's just never any doubt that he's going to haul it in. Like it's just he's got it. He never fails to come up with those. So it's a really special thing. My my take on Amon Ra that I wanted to bring up on this show. Did you see the stat about how is he up to third now in franchise receiving touchdowns? I think was the
Yeah,
stat I saw.
he passed Marvin Jones, I believe,
That
was
was
the.
that was what I was going to bring up. He had 36 receiving touchdowns as a Lion.
I was shocked when I looked because I was like, okay, one is probably Calvin, two is probably Herman Moore, third
Yeah.
is who's third? Marvin Jones. What?
Yeah, so I looked it up. He had three 9 touchdown seasons, and he had a 4 touchdown season and a 5 touchdown season. Pretty good. That's better than
Yeah.
I remember.
Man, that Marvin Jones, it's because he was on so many horrible Lions teams that just he got lost in the shuffle there. But and he remember there was that one year too where he was playing second fiddle to Kenny Golladay, where Matt Stafford, like the average separation that Stafford's receivers got was like literally 0 yards, and every throw was a contested catch, but Golladay and Marvin just kept coming down with them.
Well, I mean, they were good at contested catches. I mean, and the other one in that era, I remember Marvin Hall with the
Yeah,
the deep
deep
ball
shot
guy.
wonder.
Yeah, like they were really good vertical passing game in that time. I don't have anything against Marvin Jones' time as a Lion. Like he was a really savvy signing by Mayhew. Calvin retired, and I remember that whole narrative going into the 16th season was like, well, they don't have Calvin Johnson, so they're cooked. And I was like, they're still a decent team, and him filling in is a reason they were able to make the playoffs that year. So it just, I think for me, honestly, it was like the last Caldwell year was not enjoyable. The entire Patricia era was buried in the recesses of my mind now, and so I just kind of forgot that Marvin Jones was that productive. But shout out to him, and he was a teammate of Amon Ra. People forget that he was on the team only a couple years ago, so a little bit of a passing of the torch right there.
He was the first Lion to wear the number 0, wasn't he? Or did someone wear it before him briefly? Because it was that 23 season. I think that was the first year it became available. And he fumbled against the Chiefs and then was never seen again after that. But that 2016 team, don't forget the ghost of Anquan Bolden that was helping out
Oh
there
yeah,
too. That was such a weirdly fun team, man, until Stafford broke his thumb.
yeah. Well, they had so many comebacks. Every game was ridiculous. Like
I think only
right
one
from
of their 9 wins, it was the one against the Saints, was the only one that wasn't a comeback.
right from week one, if you remember the starter opening game against the Colts was just ridiculous, and then the whole season was ridiculous. And Bolden had so many great catches. That was That was like a peak Stafford era
That had
Lions team. Just
that
like,
had to be the year that Golden Tate had that shenanigans in overtime against Minnesota, wasn't it, too?
yes,
Like that
yes.
that one where it's like you have 14 seconds from your own like 10-yard line down by three, no timeouts, and somehow, some way they managed to pull out a
Well,
win.
like Stafford throws the just dime down the field, and they run up, and they have a timeout or they spiked it. But either
They
way,
spiked it. Yeah.
they got to like a 60-yarder for Prater right at the buzzer. It's just, if you could sum up the Stafford era Lions like in one season, it's the 2016 season. Like that's the tape you you hand to someone to
Yeah.
experience what that was like. So, um,
Anyways, Baltimore.
a few other things I wanted to bring up on the offensive side. The Goff scramble play that you talked about, I've watched it a few times now. I don't think he was going to get the first down if he scrambles. I
No, he would have just got walloped.
that linebacker is there. He has, when you watch the play live, it seems like he's going to get it, and then you have to kind of like remember that he's Jared Goff, and that's
See,
always
that's the
been an
thing.
issue.
It's like if it's a mobile quarterback, if it's like if Baker Mayfield is the quarterback running that, he can absolutely, even if it's Stafford, because Stafford would have lowered the shoulder and done something stupid to try to get it. But it's Jared Goff. He's not gonna do it.
However slow you think Goff is, he's like two times slower.
Tom
And you
Brady might
kind
have been faster.
of and you kind of forget it until you just watch him, and then it sort of sets in how slow he actually is. So watching it live, I was furious that he did not run the ball there. And then I watch it again and again, and I'm like, I don't think he was going to get it. And the thing was, it was Raymond he was targeting, I think, right in the flat
Yeah.
there. He was open. It's just that's not a play that Goff can really make. And
No.
you watch Lamar in this game on the drive where they stop him at the goal line. He's got that play on like a 3rd and 6 where they flush him from the pocket, and he moves and like turns and all in one motion kind of comes around and just drops a dime right on the sideline, like a perfect throw. And that's just the difference, is that those kind of quarterbacks can make that play and Goff can't. But on the flip side, Goff knows defenses so well, and he's so accurate and so decisive that he doesn't just stand around in the pocket for 9 seconds and then get sacked 7 times. So that's the trade off of this game.
If you want a real fun challenge, take someone who's never watched an NFL game before and try to tell them that Lamar Jackson and Jared Goff play the same position. I have never seen two quarterbacks that are more different in the way that they play the game. And look, Lamar was still very good as a passer in this game. We'll talk about the defense in a bit. But like, and Lamar is probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league too, despite his reputation for just being a runner. Goff is just at a different level of accuracy and poise and awareness of what the defense is going to do and diagnosing coverages. He's just, I think you said it last week. He's the last of a dying breed out here at the quarterback position, where he's the only one that doesn't have to rely on running to succeed. And it's honestly kind of special to watch. Aside from that, should shout out also Johnny Morton. Couple of real nice play calls in this game. There was the double pass with Montgomery and Goff that went downfield to St. Brown for a chunk of 17. And the one that I really liked was the goal line, the handoff to Amon-Ra, who tosses it back to Gibbs on the goal line for that touchdown. Just people were criticizing the creativity. I was one of them coming into the season and in week one. Man, he still has some tricks up his sleeve.
I feel vindicated in my take about Campbell being really the source of a lot of it, in that obviously I can't deny or dispute that Johnson probably had a role in coming up with some of this stuff, but at the same time, I remember that first season under Dan Campbell, and Ben Johnson wasn't majorly involved. He wasn't a play caller at that point. He was just a positional coach. And the Lions did tons of weird stuff that year. And this is like Dan Campbell's the coach that calls fake punts like 4 times a year. Like, I just don't believe that that guy is just suddenly not going to call trick plays because the coordinator is gone. And so I'm very glad to be affirmed in that take. And the interesting thing, if you saw the stuff on Twitter from like the Coach Dan Casey account, is that they ran that play in New Orleans when Campbell was there under Sean Payton. They ran that play in Dallas when Campbell was a player there, and there was even a clip of that. So that's a play that Campbell very clearly likes. I'm referring to the flip from Amon-Ra to Gibbs, and that's a great play in part because they've got the defense is played like perfectly to be exploited in that situation. They've got the numbers on Gibbs. Or on Amon-Ra. They're totally ready for him, and then he just pitches, and Gibbs has got it wide, just like perfect play call. The double pass, that's always a fun play. It's just my reaction to it is always like that's a lot of work for 20 yards. Right? Like
Well,
right,
it's
it's
a
one thing
second
when
read though, right? Like the deep shot was taken away.
yeah. It just I've seen that play happen a few times, and a lot of times it ends up just, especially because defenses are so quick that by the time you get it back to the quarterback, there's usually a rusher there, and he's just got to pull the trigger. And a lot of times it's the underneath one that's more available than the deep shot.
Hmm.
And so you're just like, cool, we got 20 yards. Like that's a lot of work for 20 yards to set that play up. There's a lot of ways it can go wrong, but it usually works. On the flip side with Morton, though, we do have to talk about the sequence at the end of the first half. Not the one to set up the field goal, the one before that. They get that stop. They're up 14-7. They get the fumble on the play, which sets them up with positive field position, which is huge. Feels like they have an opportunity to drive and get a two-score lead before halftime, and they just blow it. And on one hand, we should note that not running the ball there was a huge mistake. Like, obviously, you need to run the ball, either force the Ravens to burn a timeout or just get the clock running. But because you've been doing it all game, and it's not like they had 25 seconds, they had well over a minute, they had timeouts in their pocket. Like, run the ball at least once just to add that in. And then the second down play, because first of all, they get the penalty on the first down play, right? So that resets them. Then they have three plays. First one, you have a deep rush around Decker, and Goff just kind of throws it away. Second down play, they biff pass protection, like the only time in the game where pass protection really breaks down, and it's a free rusher over the left edge. And then the third down one, they run like a screen that never has a chance. And at that point,
Oh,
I'm just like,
third and long screens are my least favorite genre of play.
yeah, especially in this situation, like they're gonna, if you run that screen, they're just gonna burn a timeout and get the ball back anyway. At this point, just try to get a first down in that situation, at least to me.
The only time you should ever run a third and long screen is if you're on like the edge of field goal range and it's like third and 20 and you're just trying to salvage a couple yards to make the field goal easier.
Or on the flip side, which is like if you're at third and 30 on your own like 8 yard line and you want to give the
Yeah,
punter, a little room to work with, that kind
but
of
you're
thing.
conceding with that play.
Yes, and it wasn't like they were in third and 30 in this situation. Like they still could gain a first down and they just kind of waved the white flag and it really didn't make a lot of sense. So that was a bad sequence. The drive after that where they tried to get the 70-yard field goal, I don't think was a major issue with him. Goff just kind of checked it down quite a bit on that drive, looked a little uncomfortable. Just as I mentioned, when they weren't running the ball, they looked off. And in hindsight, they should have run it at least on that first drive at least once. I also want to give a couple other things here. Gibbs Texas route to the 1 yard line. There's people always wanting that. It feels like the
Still
Lions.
undefeated.
Feels like the Lions never run it outside of like the red zone area. Like they rarely run that play outside in like the middle of the field, but they run it. They ran it for a touchdown on fourth down against the Packers last year. I'm trying to remember
Mhm.
the other times, but it feels like they always are running it right
Vikings.
around the goal line. Yeah. So I've got no issue with it. That's just an interesting place where they tend to bring it out.
The only time I've seen them run it outside the red zone would have been the game against San Francisco last year, where it wasn't quite a Texas route, but it was like a version of it where Gibbs is running more of a circle over the middle and he gets like 20 yards on it. But it's certainly not something that it's weird because you get Gibbs one-on-one with a linebacker, no one's gonna keep up with him at any part of the field. So I get in the red zone, like it's kind of your free if you only go to it every so often, like 5, 6 times a year, then you're pretty much 5 or 6 times a year guaranteed a fourth and one touchdown in the red zone. But at the same time, that'll lead to us being like, yeah, but you could also use it more because it
It
works every
just
time.
Yeah, it just feels like such an irresistible matchup advantage to not be taking advantage of it at some point. Also, I loved the Goff sneak where
Yeah.
he just kind of checks into it, looks at where there's a spot in the defensive front that's open, and then just falls forward. That's the beauty of having a veteran quarterback. I love that play. So credit there. I don't, as a whole, looking at this game, I don't know. Is the Ravens defense bad? Like,
They might be, which is shocking because they were first in rush defense EPA last year, and they're 32nd so far through 3 games this year. I don't know what happened to them over the offseason. They just can't defend the run anymore, and it's shocking.
I mean, in fairness, they played the Bills, they played the Lions. Those are two of the top offenses, so we need to see them play some more games. But this was just remarkable the way the Lions manhandled them up front. It just blew them away time and time and time again. And that's got to be a big concern if you're a Ravens fan at this point in time.
Yeah, and like we said off the top, a big point of confidence for the Lions, who we are not allowed to get concerned about the offensive line anymore because they went in against a very good Ravens team and did that to them. Hank Fraley still deserves a statue, although we got to pump the brakes on some of the Hank Fraley praise. Guys, we're going to get him too much attention and get him some offensive coordinator looks again next offseason. So just chill a little bit, chill, so that we can keep our boy around forever.
Yeah, not much Isaac Tisla in this game. It's just another note. He
Yeah,
he didn't
two
not
targets.
play. He was out there on the first play of the game, as a matter of fact. He got plenty of snaps, just didn't really get involved.
It's coming.
Is
It's
what
like
it is.
there's so many mouths to feed. Like JMO had 2 catches on the first drive, nothing the rest of the game. Okay, Laporta only gets like 3, 4 catches a game nowadays. Like because there's just unless your name is Amon-Ra St. Brown, your production is not guaranteed.
And at the end of the day, when you score that many points, like who cares? So,
90 points in the last 2 games. Is that good?
uh, yeah. My other thing, mahogany face mask penalty, real bad, real
Yeah,
bad.
I've been a while since I've seen an offensive line face mask penalty.
And it was legit. Like
Oh
he
yeah,
got the fingers in there, good tug. The helmet is turned fully sideways. And watching it on replay, that defender was one of the nearest defenders to like the hole. So like if there's a world like it's very possible that the defender gets a hand on Montgomery and holds that to a shorter run if he's not being face masked. So is what it is. Trying to think if I have anything else here. Oh, the other one, tight end pass pro, not great in this
I
game.
don't love Brock Wright blocking edge rushers.
Yeah.
Which hot take I know, but I don't
Yeah,
love it
that
when a tackle is not the one blocking edge, guys.
yeah, there's a TFL on the run in the run game that first drive where they're
Yep.
asking Brock Wright to block Owe like slanting inside of him, and you're just like, oh god,
Yeah,
that's
thanks.
not gonna work. So, not the greatest tight end week, I guess, but hard to be too mad about anything on offense when you score that many points against a team like Baltimore.
Relevant though, because Brock Wright and Sam Laporta are gonna have to be chipping every single play next week against Myles Garrett. So better get good at it. Get your reps in. Now, as we switch over to the defense, I have to start this with a simple question. Is this the best you've ever felt about a 30-point allowed performance?
Probably, I'd have to go back and look at the 30-point allowed performances of the past, but this was a good showing. I don't think there was one from Alliance. There's probably a game in there where a team gave up 30 with like multiple defensive touchdowns the other way or something. But at least in terms of games where all the points are scored by the offense, probably yes.
And to be fair, garbage time TD. And although that final Ravens drive where the Lions are up by 14, they get the sack to 3rd and 26. It's like, wow, we're feeling great. And then the most unacceptable display of tackling I've ever seen against Justice Hill. And then the worst coverage I've ever seen on the next. Like, the Lions mailed it in at the end. And that was very frustrating to watch. Shepard will definitely have them run a lap for that. But the defensive performance as a whole, it's hard to start anywhere except for the defensive front and the pass rush because that is the story of the game. The Lions hold Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to 85 rushing yards. The Ravens very seldom get held under 100 rushing yards as a team. It's only happened a couple times in the last like 10 years or something, or like 6, 7, 8 years. They've been a very dominant rushing offense for a long time. So this was very impressive. And that's also with the fact that Derrick Henry got like 35 yards on the first drive and then was held to 15 the rest of the way. Super impressive from this defensive front.
Yeah, absolutely. The first drive is kind of interesting in the way it was a bit of a misnomer for the rest of the game, where you're watching that, and you're kind of like, oh boy, this is not great. Might get run all over by this team, and then it didn't come to pass. And basically, from that point forward, I don't know if you have the stats about Henry on that drive versus the rest of the game, but I can't imagine
I'll find
he
him.
got a whole lot because he didn't finish with that many yards to begin with. He had one long run on that drive, and then they went away from it. Honestly, like he didn't get many carries in the second half. He might have gotten like 3 carries the whole second half, to be honest. He has the fumble, and otherwise they're just passing, 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 passing the whole second half. It was too many dropbacks, I would say, from a Ravens standpoint. But part of that is the Lions rendered the rushing game pretty ineffective.
So here the stats on this. On the first drive, Derrick Henry had 3 rushes for 36 yards and a touchdown. The rest of the game, he had 9 rushes for 14 yards and a fumble. That'll do.
Yeah, yeah,
And we were talking earlier about David Montgomery's ability to fall forward for extra yards. Derrick Henry is a even more egregious version of that, where you can stop him with no momentum for a gain of 0, and he will somehow get 4 yards out of it. Jack Campbell, the amount of one-on-one tackles that man made against Derrick Henry was very impressive. Jack Campbell also. So on the first drive, Henry gets his runs. Kirby Joseph on the touchdown run is hilarious to watch because he kind of runs into the box. He's like, "I'm here," and then Derrick Henry bounces outside. He's like, "Oh no!" And so that was tough to watch. Kirby Joseph in run defense is very funny sometimes. Like anytime Kirby's not in a deep zone, it's very funny to watch him try to defend because he's actually like very one-dimensional as a defender. But aside from that, the defensive front, they step up. Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes also had the real bad rep against Lamar Jackson where they over pursue so aggressively to the outside and Jackson just cuts it upfield for like a gain of 12. Aside from that, though, aside from the first drive where the Ravens had, I had the it pulled up, but it was like 50 rushing yards on that first drive. And again, they finished with 85 in the game. It was just very impressive the way that the Lions contained Derrick Henry and more importantly, contained Lamar Jackson. And that leads us into the pass rush, which had 7 sacks, 30 pressures in this game. For those keeping score at home, Lamar Jackson only had 28 pass attempts. So on 35 dropbacks, 30 pressures. That is comical. And part of that is Lamar holding it too long. Part of that is the coverage was good, especially in the second half. We'll talk about Terrion Arnold's first half a little bit later. Just insane. And again, man of the hour on defense, Al Kadeen Muhammad. 2.5 more sacks in this game. He also had a very nice cleanup tackle on Lamar later on. This dude's just been unbelievable this season.
yeah. And what's interesting about Muhammad in this game, I don't know how many snaps he played. I didn't look at the PFF numbers or anything yet. But he didn't play really in the first half. It was they come out to start with O'Connor playing at edge, and then they rotate Lacey in at edge, and they're not really having any success with those guys. So then in comes Muhammad in the second half, and it really changes. Now, I will note that none of his sacks and big moments were really like him tearing around the tackle and just instant sacking or anything. Like he was cleaning up plays where the Lions were getting good coverage. They were containing Lamar in the pocket. He was waiting, trying to see what's going on, and then Muhammad would come in and finish it off usually. And that was really the story of the 7 sacks, which were disproportionately in the second half. I think like 6 of the 7 were in the second half, especially as when I was going through the rewatch, I was like, where are the sacks? Where are the sacks? And then all of a sudden they're just piled up on those last few drives. And what was happening was they were keeping him in the pocket and they were using spies by the linebackers. Nowaski was in on one, Campbell was in on one, Anzalone's in on one, and those guys were coming in late. And then usually them and Muhammad would kind of convene and bring Lamar down. The only one that was like a classic sort of sack was Hutchinson had one where he like just smoked the
Oh,
left tackle,
they
and
spoke.
then he like
That's rep is so funny because Tyleek does his thing where he ends up wandering to the edge, and it makes like it winds up with 3 offensive linemen being around Hutchinson, and he's like muscling through 3 people immediately for a clean shot. We'll talk about Hutch in a second, but he also is back.
yeah, each game Hutchinson has been better in the second half than he is in the first half. That's been a bit of a pattern so far. But that was a nice rep. At this point, I I think they're gonna have to keep rotating at the other edge spot because I don't really
Yep.
think that Al-Qadim Muhammad is a 50 snap a game edge
No.
player. Like, so I think when you get Josh Pascal back, it then will make a lot of sense to rotate Pascal and Muhammad on standard versus passing downs. But at least right now, I don't really need to see, when fully healthy, I don't need to see a lot of Pat O'Connor or Lacey out at edge. Like, just stick with those two guys. That should be the rotation at the moment. And certainly on passing downs, it should be Muhammad. No question right now. He has earned that right.
Well, we talked about it on offense with the Gibbs Texas routes. Just because something is working in small doses doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in larger doses. So for Muhammad, you could slowly, incrementally increase his snaps, but he should be in the situational pass rusher role right now because he's been very effective. There's something that we said about a guy who just has a super high motor that will work his tail off to clean up the sacks once the quarterback tries to scramble outside the pocket. And that's exactly what he was doing against Lamar. The one sack that was actually I felt more impressive was one where he actually was unblocked, and it was by design so that Lamar could step up around him. And Lamar tried to step up, and Muhammad was just having none of it. He stepped up with him and fully wrapped him up. So very disciplined game from Muhammad, very disciplined game from the entire defensive front. I do have to shout out Kelvin Shepard because I did not think that they were going to use spies at all because traditionally under Aaron Glenn, they didn't. Dan Campbell talked about the fact that we don't use spies here. And Kelvin Shepard was Aaron Glenn's mentee, right? Like he was his understudy. And I fully expect him to continue that trend. And now he didn't use a spy all the time, obviously, but when he did, it worked wonders. I also want to shout out my guy Derek Barnes. He had a cleanup sack coming from coverage, but he also had a play again in the run game where Lamar on a keeper tries to get outside, and Barnes sheds and tackles Lamar in one fell swoop. So he also had a great game. Honestly, I cannot name anyone in the front seven that had a bad day. Like they were all just very solid.
Yeah, and I think what stood out to me on rewatch in particular was the linebackers I thought were really good.
Yeah.
This was a great linebacker game because some of the run stuffs were the tackles, but on other plays, the tackles just kind of hung in there or even got moved back a bit. And then the next wave was right there. And particularly the goal line stand sequence. It's not really on the tackles necessarily. It is everybody else behind them that were just fitting the gaps right there. Boom. Stonewalling him. And as you said at the top, like not letting Derrick Henry fall forward is a really tough thing to do. And they did it repeatedly in this game. Cunningham, we should shout out, had a play on the third down and goal in that sequence. Campbell finishes it off. They have that play sniffed out perfectly. And after the play in which they failed to tackle Lamar, as you mentioned, with Campbell and Barnes early in the game, from that point forward, linebacker tackling was really good. And there were some cases where it looked dicey, and then they just get the shoestring tackle. There was a couple of those where, and to be clear, like Lamar is shifty. Like that is his whole thing. He's kind
Yeah.
of hard to tackle. So missing some tackles in there or making it look a little dicey before you do it, there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, they got it done repeatedly in this game and really stepped up. So that was a great showing in the run and pass rush game. I will say the linebacker coverage maybe not as strong, but
Yeah. And that's where Campbell especially like Campbell is very, very good as a run defender from that Mike spot. He's so good at diagnosing and getting downhill and wrapping up and making tackles. And you saw it on the fourth and goal where he's against Lamar Jackson one on one in open field. And Lamar fakes the pass and then tries to duck inside, and Campbell just stuffs it completely, strip sack, all that. But when he drops into coverage, we're still working on that part of his game. He's fine. There was also there was one play later in the game where the Lions had they were showing kind of a robber look with Branch playing the robber, and then Branch rotates out to a cover three, and then the linebackers and Branch kind of all just fail to cover Rashad Bateman for a gain of like 12 on third down, I think it was, which was like, and watching the replay back, it's like Branch is just too slow to come down from the safety spot, and the linebackers just kind of drift way too far to one side because of the motion on the offense. So coverage, we're still figuring out. Barnes and Campbell are both much better run defenders than they are coverage guys. And Zaloni's better in coverage. I did kind of feel bad for him because he had good coverage on Mark Andrews on the first touchdown Andrews had, but it was just a perfect throw by Lamar. But as far as coverage goes, I we'll talk about Terran in a second. I do want to shout out DJ Reed because he was tasked with shutting down Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers was so irrelevant in this game. So I do want to give flowers to DJ Reed for the performance that he had in coverage there.
Flowers against flowers.
There you go. Pun,
Yeah,
pun and unintended, but
yeah. I mean, I thought Reed was really good in this game. He wasn't targeted much when we saw him. He was where he needed to be. I think for a corner, that's pretty much what I want. If you don't see the corner, that's generally a good sign.
did
He
drop his
almost
back.
hasn't. Yeah, I would have liked to see a better replay of that because it did look like the receiver helped kind of rake it out a little bit, get the hand in there. It wasn't as bad as the branch one. Though those two
No.
plays during that section of the game, because I think that was the drive that put the Ravens up 21-14, I believe, in the third
Yeah, first
quarter.
drive of the second half.
Yeah. And at that point, the game's starting to tilt away from the Lions a little bit. And you're just like, man, oh man, we're not that far away from being in a pretty good spot here. And you just got to catch those balls when they're thrown, and you have an opportunity to catch them. So that was pretty frustrating. But as a whole, good day for Reed. Robertson, a couple moments where it looked like he got, but I didn't have a ton of takes on him as a whole.
Yeah, he's been fine. The main one, though, I should also mention DJ Reed fumble recovery after Aiden Hutchinson with the perfect punch out on Derrick Henry later in the game before Christian Mahogany kind of ruined the Lions' ability to go up two touchdowns at that point. But very huge play by Hutchinson that I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that. That was right before his sack as well. But obviously, the one negative that people are talking about a lot coming out of this game is fellow podcast host Terrion Arnold, who once again gives up a big play, gets beat a couple of times in the first half. He was a lot better in the second half. Also gets flagged for defensive pass interference, though, on a play where he also got face masked, but we're not going to talk about that. What I guess what is your level of concern with Terrion right now? Because in camp, all the rage, all the buzz was about how Terrion is taking the sophomore, like he is breaking out in year two. He's about to take the jump. And then we got to the regular season, and it seems like we've reverted back to how he was his rookie year, which was pretty mediocre. So, what are we seeing from Terrion, and how concerned are we?
I would say the concern is definitely rising. The more games where sort of the light bulb is not coming on, that's a problem. And it's curious because he didn't play in preseason, so I can't verify the sort of camp hype. But the camp hype is based on real people. Like this isn't college football. They don't practice behind closed doors, and we have to get the hype from coaches who are trying to put the spin out there. Like there are observers, there are independent media members sitting in the bleachers watching this. They were claiming he was doing well. I'm not seeing it really, but I'm willing to believe that it was happening. I'm also willing to believe that games are different than practices, even joint practices. We kind of talked about that in week one with the Lions and the offensive line not playing in preseason games. So as a whole, he gets cooked a couple times on the one drive. The DPI was frustrating because I it was a real call. Like I'm not gonna say it was a bad call, but he didn't really need to do it. Like he wasn't toasted.
Uncatchable.
Yeah, and like it's not a great throw, and he's just getting handsy and grabbing, and then the balls where he gets beat on, for the most part, he's just playing really soft. Like that one deep ball, he's playing like 5-10 yards off. The receiver's cutting out, and he's fading towards the center of the field, and he's not playing a lot of press man at the moment. He's playing pretty soft, and I wonder if the like groin hamstring thing is still bothering him, or kind of what is going on with that.
Maybe, but see, the reason I don't want to give too much credit to the injury thing is Kelvin Shepard said it after week one. If you're hurt, come out of the game. That like
Hmm.
if it is hampering your ability to play your position, you should not be in the game. Let Rocky Sin go out there, even though I wouldn't feel great about that either. The problem with Terrion is I do think there's something to be said about the Lions having him play so far off because that is not his game. When he was drafted, it was this is a press man corner. He's going to be physical at the line. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he plays with a ton of intensity at the line and he will disrupt guys. He isn't able to do that. And when it this isn't even exclusive to Terrion. You could ask any corner in the league to line up 10 yards off a guy and say, okay, cover him in man to man on an island, but you're not allowed to press him. A lot of corners are going to struggle with that. So I do think part of it is schematic. The Lions are playing a fair amount of zone, which obviously Terrion isn't great at either. I just it feels like he's not necessarily being in the put in the best position to succeed based on what his skill set is. It seems like the Lions are trying to challenge him to get better at some of the weaker areas of his game, which is good, but I don't necessarily love doing that by not letting him focus on what he's good at.
Yeah, I mean, the argument of playing him off a little bit is this is a guy who's definitely struggled in coverage in his NFL career, and if you give him some cushion, he can work with that. But he just hasn't really been using the cushion very well, I guess is the way I would describe it. Like he's not
Yeah.
using that for that little 5-10 yard start to then come slashing down and applying tight pressure. He's just kind of maintaining the cushion, and that's not really covering anybody. So I would be interested in. I think Campbell had a quote about potentially using Robertson more outside. We saw he could do it to some degree last season after Carlton Davis went down. I would be interested in that, like taking some of the workload off and maybe taking Terrion off the field for some plays. That okay for this drive we're going to play Robertson outside and we're going to play Rocky Ascent and we're going to play Avonte Maddox at nickel and Terrion you're going to watch from the sideline for a little bit and just kind of scale it back and just take the load off him. I think that would be potentially useful. Just to because he's from the start he's been dealt a very tough hand. He's been asked to cover very good receivers. He last year he got the whole tour through the league in terms of great receivers he had to cover, and maybe just easing it up a little bit that way is something they could try and do.
Well, but the good news is you're playing a very mediocre offense, to put it kindly. Their defense isn't unreal, but this has to be a get right game for Terry on against the Browns because Jerry Jeudy's a fine receiver. Cedric Tillman's a fine receiver. They are hardly world beaters, and you have got to be able to make some play, especially since like Joe Flacco at this point of his career, he's just chucking it. He doesn't care. So we got to build some confidence here at some point because corner is such a confidence-based position that I feel like if Terrion just gets a couple of reps where he has good coverage and makes a play on the ball, it'll really go a long way. But right now, every time the ball's thrown his way, it seems to either be a catch or a penalty. Very few and far between for the stops or the good coverage that is not resulting in a like where the ball is just not catchable. I don't know, man. It's just tough. And I really, really wish that Ennis Rakestraw was healthy enough that we could have just thrown him in for a few snaps a game to give Terry on a breather.
It would really help right now. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah. So, aside from that, do you have any other notes that you want to mention on defense?
Yeah, Tyleek, I thought, had a couple pass rush moments, not like teleporting into the backfield, but just some bull rushes that got up into Lamar's grill a little bit. So that was nice to see on rewatch. Beyond that, I guess this leads into ref talk, but they missed the flag on Branch. That was actually fairly consequential. The 15-yard penalty that wiped out. It
I
was
was
like it was going to
so
be like second
livid.
and 14, I think, right? And then all of a sudden, it all gets washed out. That was frustrating.
For those who aren't aware of what we're talking about, Brian Branch got called for a chop block, low block on a run play in which he did not touch the lower half of the tight end, I believe it was, because he got hit in the head. So I don't know what the official saw there because Branch got hit in the head and the offensive player ran over him. And so I guess because the tight end was like leaning forward over him and fell forward over him after running him over, they thought that he got hit low, I guess. But that winds up being a horrible, horrible call that was or could have been very consequential, as you mentioned. So that was tough.
Yeah, so that just is what it is. As a whole, they give up 5.9 yards per play. Before the late drive, it was 5.3.
Ugh.
Not,
Learn
nothing
how to
that
tackle.
nothing that can really be said about that drive other than that. Like they have three guys between Campbell, Robertson, and Branch that are all tackling the same dude, and they all just bounce off of him, and keeps running. And the thing is, you make the tackle, it's about to be 4th and 12, and the Ravens have to burn a timeout with like 50 seconds left. Instead, it's like a 30-yard gain, and the guy goes out of bounds. Like that
That was so.
lost their concentration for a little bit, and it made them end up having to field an onside kick, which thankfully Laporta recovered, and they were out of the woods. But definitely something to just the game's not over. You can't just play
Yeah, no.
flag football in that situation. Like you have to wrap him up and tackle him.
That was the single most inexcusable missed tackle the Lions have had in a long time. And, it's fine, but it's a one-off, I would assume, but just a really bad lapse in judgment, especially coming off of how, like, you just sacked Lamar for like a 16-yard loss to force 3rd and 26. Like, you're feeling good, and then that's how you follow that up. Like, come on now.
Yeah, really, really frustrating moment there. But at the end of the day, thankfully it didn't really lead to anything massive.
Yeah, exactly. So, all in all, again, 30 points allowed, 24 for most of the game. So, the defensive performance a lot better than the score indicates, especially considering quality of opponent.
I mean, this is a Ravens team. They gained 8.6 yards per play against Buffalo. And
Yeah.
you look at all of their weapons and what they can do, and even just the lack of success the Lions have had against mobile quarterbacks over
Yep.
the past few years. We remember the Geno Smith games. We remember Justin Fields running up and down the field against the Lions in some of those games. So to do that it was really really impressive showing, big step forward for the group, and hopefully they can keep that momentum going against a far worse offense this coming week, or really the next 2 weeks with a backup quarterback in
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
And immobile quarterbacks at that. I think this is the first time the Lions have had success against a mobile quarterback that's not named Kyler Murray since probably the 2021 game against the Ravens, where Lamar and the Ravens offense only scored 17, but and that was like Aaron Glenn's third game. Actually, a lot of parallels with that. That was Aaron Glenn's third game as a play
Yeah.
caller, the Kelvin Shepherd's third game as a play caller. Difference is the Lions didn't get beat on a record-setting field goal, which, oh well, but I saw the Jake Bates field goal at the end of the half would have been hilarious. Breaking the NFL record against the Ravens would have felt like a little bit of poetic justice there.
Especially if you remember the 2013 game against the Ravens on
The
Monday Night
Monday
Football in
Nighter.
Detroit. Yeah, with the 6 field goals made by Justin Tucker.
I hate that guy, but he's out of the league now,
The,
so
I forgot about that actually. When the field goal was going to be attempted, I was like, "Oh, this is Tucker." I'm like, "No, it's not. Who is this guy?" And
yeah.
he made a field goal. Or he didn't make a field goal. What is our take on the? Now we're into the next segment. What is our take on the phantom field goal situation?
Can we have the tracker in the football? How is this a problem, guys?
Can't they
Extend the
just
uprights,
enlarge?
put
Yeah, extend the
yeah,
uprights. That doesn't
or
seem
put a
that hard.
laser in there. Like, I don't know what you got to do, but this should not be a problem to where everyone is immediately going to Twitter and being like, "Did that go in?" And then the anal. I don't even know who the rules analyst was on the broadcast, but it's like, well, it's not a reviewable play because it's too close. What do you mean it's too close to be a reviewable play? That's exactly when you need to be able to review it. That was a horrible explanation from the broadcast, but yeah, I don't know. It did, like, the angle they showed after the commercial break when they came back, where it was like from the bottom of the upright. It did look like it went through by an inch, but this is such a fixable problem.
Yeah, I was sitting there watching, and I was rewinding it, and then they come back and show us that other angle. I'm like, man, that is so close. Like I honestly don't know, and probably no one has a better view than the referees standing at the
Yeah.
base of it. But it's kind of like there's a lot of lack of precision in football still, and we're slowly eradicating it with the chip in the football. But we used to just measure first downs with a literal chain. We still have the referee who stands on the sideline and claims to know exactly where the punt goes out of bounds, and then runs up the sideline to mark it, which is one of my favorite things in football, but far from an exact science. And the same
Hey,
thing here with
gave the
the
Lions an
referee.
extra 10 yards in this game where the official sprinted 15 yards up the sideline to be like, no, the punt went out here. The Lions get the ball at the 30. I was like, all right, thank you. That's like the only time I will say that as a aside. I was watching that game. I was like, man, the Ravens, every time they're spotting the ball, seem to get an extra half yard on these spots of the Lions. They just seem to spot these an extra yard or two behind. I'm like, the refs are, I don't like the way they're spotting the football tonight.
Referees are so bad spotting the football, just generally. Like
Just
it
bad at
is just
everything.
an it's I mean, in fairness, it's a really hard job. There's so much going on that you got to watch, so many rules involved. But that was a weird field goal. As a whole, though, not a shining moment for special teams.
Nope. Still not, still bad. I have a hot take.
Uh-oh.
At what point do we consider a different punt returner? Because Khalif Raymond has not been it this season through 3 games. He has looked like he's lost a step. He's been running east-west way too much. There's been a lack of decisiveness. I think he filled in on kickoff after Vaki got hurt. He looked fine, but the punt returns look uncharacteristically bad. And it's a shame because Raymond, when he did come in on offense, had a couple of really nice blocks in this game and he's obviously a very good leader for the team, but his one kind of standout trait is his punt returning, and it has been a mess so far this season.
Yeah, the one where he returns it inside the 5. I never liked that. Not good. And he just hasn't had like the juice, I guess you would say, like the shiftiness, the decisive, and not really making anything happen. But it's as much as we could talk about shifting it, because I mean, if he's not returning punts, who are you having do it? Like,
Love it.
yeah, yeah, I guess that as long
Similar
as he can,
archetype.
as long as he can catch the punt and not fumble it, then I'm in favor.
It's just, and look, that is a little reactionary. Maybe it's been 3 weeks, but it took us 2 games to get rid of Grant Stewart at kick return. So the Lions are very willing to experiment. And Dave Phipp, we talked about at the start of the year. The seat warmer's on. It's not like it's not burning yet, but we're kind of cranking up the heat a little bit.
Yeah, I'm feeling uncomfortable about that unit because and that's where like we can talk about making a change with Raymond, but right now I don't feel great that if you make a change with Raymond, you bring someone else in, it's going to be a ton better because there's issues all over right now. Like they
Yep.
take a holding penalty on a punt where if Stewart doesn't commit that penalty, it's a block. Um, they have a kickoff that is almost run back if Jake Bates does not make a tackle. Like that kind of
When a
stuff just
kicker has
can't
to
be
make a tackle,
happening.
man, yeah, horrible.
And yeah, so and they did have one kickoff out of bounds, I believe, in this game too.
Yep.
There just way too many issues going on, and it's I don't know where it's coming from because special teams have generally been fairly strong under Dan Campbell, and they have good specialists. I don't know why what is happening. Why this is such a mess in terms of the coverage units and the protection units.
I don't have that answer, but it's so weird because it is a priority under Dan Campbell. When we get to roster cuts every year, every single player from like the 45th roster spot to 53 is all about, okay, but what do you do on special teams? Are you going to contribute positively on special teams? The Lions care about this way too much for it to be this bad. And look, I don't know if it is a coordinator problem. I don't know if it's a personnel problem. I don't know if it's just an execution problem. I don't know what it is. The Lions are just really struggling. And you know what? It's possible that some of this is because of the new kickoff rules and the touchback rules that bring it out to the 35 now. So they'll obviously every team is a little bit more scared to kick it into the end zone. But we're at the point where I'm like, we might want to consider just kicking it into the end zone every time and taking the 35 yards because that's better than giving up 40, 45. And there was the one play that Jake Bates had where he perfectly kicked it down
Yep.
inside the 5 and it bounces into the end zone and the Ravens end up getting the touchback to their own 20. That's beautiful. If Jake Bates could do that every time, we would not have any problems. You're not going to get that more than once every few weeks because it is such a difficult play to replicate. And again, you mentioned Bates kicked one out of bounds. So I don't know what's going on, but I was like, when the Ravens were lining up for that onside kick, I was like, I swear to God, with all the problems we've had, if we also have to deal with onside kick troubles, I'm going to be very mad. But thankfully, they at least recovered that.
Game theory section. We have a few fourth downs in this game to talk about. Fourth and three, plus 11, 0-0 game, 10:27 to go in the first quarter. Go.
Yeah,
Yep. I mean, I don't think that there's a lot of dispute there. Like, you're not going to win this game kicking field goals. Um, Fourth and one at the plus four, 21-21, start of the fourth quarter. Go.
easy go. Yeah, easy go.
Yep. Yep. And then the big one. Uh, Fourth and two from around midfield, with about 3 minutes or well, about 2 minutes to go in the game.
Every single time you go. I was
I
watching, so I've been doing live streams during every game, and as soon as that happened, I looked over, I was like, they're going for this. You have to go for this. You go for the win. This is how we play football here. Like if if you punt it, and especially because you're up a touchdown. If worst case scenario there, Ravens get the ball at the 49, they go down, score, tie the game, and or go for two and get it, and then you're gonna have like 40 seconds to a minute with three timeouts to go tie the game or go get the win. The downside was not enough to outweigh the risk.
Yeah, the only thing I was kind of on the fence with was that if there was 2 yards from winning the game, then I would be go every time. At the time, I was thinking, okay, you need the 2 yards, but then you also need another first down on top of that to begin burning the timeouts. However, they pick up 20 yards, they get into field goal range, at
Yeah.
which point they've basically won the game as long as Bates does his job. So, from that standpoint, then it really worked out. I probably would have gone in the end. I was a little more on the fence, but they went 3 times, they got all three, and it's why they won the game. And that's
Yep.
pretty much the underlying theory of all the stuff we talk about.
And look, we talk about this, the fourth downs all the time, going back to the NFC Championship a few years ago that ended up backfiring. This is how the Lions play football. Sometimes it'll backfire, but you live and die by the way that like Dan Campbell will live and die by his brand of football. And he forces coaches to adapt to his style. We see that other teams go for it on fourth down more against the Lions as a reaction to what Dan Campbell is going to do. That's just Lions football.
Yeah, it's kind of it's pretty really beautiful. I mean, the other thing I have for this section, should they have challenged the throwback screenplay?
Yes, the NFL also should have reviewed it and with replay assist. Don't know what happened to replay assist on that one. Um, there was no reason for that play to have been second and 19 and the ball gets snapped.
So you're right. I so when you're watching it live, you're like, that was absolutely a forward pass. And then you slow it down, you watch on replay, and I'm kind of like charting it out on the screen. I'm like, okay, this is where he releases the ball, and I'm gonna draw a line. And it's like so close. I still think it was forward. I could see a world where they say it's a perfect lateral, but it's the first half and it's a drive killing play. So there's no reason not to challenge. Like second half and the timeouts are a consideration, then maybe you think about it a little bit more. But first half, no doubt, just challenge, see what happens. Because not challenging it, that was the end of the drive, basically. So I was pretty disappointed from that standpoint. Also, just feels like there's some things to still clean up. They had to burn some timeouts to avoid delay of
I was gonna
games
bring
in
that
this
up.
game.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say I hated burning two timeouts on offensive drives when you did not need to in the second half. You can't have it.
yeah, and they end up burning one on a 3rd and 5. And I remember saying at the time, like, well, if they don't get it, it was a total waste of a timeout, and it was because that was the play where Goff turfs it on the scramble play. So that stuff can get cleaned up. They also have multiple offsides in this game, one from Lopez, one from Hutchinson.
Both
Don't
were
love don't
horrible.
Yeah, don't love that. So it
Yeah.
feels like this was a really impressive game for the Lions, really satisfying win, proving themselves to still be in the upper echelon of the league. And yet, I still think there's a lot of room to grow. And it's early in the season. There's still stuff to smooth out. And there's ways this team can get better, not just in getting a Liam McNeil back, but in this kind of stuff as well, the precision and the execution standpoint.
Pretty good spot to be in though. Where we're talking about, hey, you just beat one of the NFL's best, and you still have a good amount of room to grow. That's a great position to be in. 2-1 and going against a Browns team that we'll talk about in a minute. But first, we have to talk about a lot of chaos that happened on Sunday. So, first things first, we have to send a big thank you to the Cleveland Browns for whatever that game was. I do not know if I've seen a more comical way for a team to blow a game in the last 5 minutes of a fourth quarter, but that was amazing to watch from the Green Bay Packers as everything that needed to go wrong went wrong. And the Browns, by the stroke of the craziest miracle I've seen in a while, erase a 10-point deficit, score three times in the last 5 minutes to beat the Green Bay Packers. I have no words. I have no words aside from thank you.
Yeah, it's a really strange game because like nothing was happening in this game for quite a while. It's 10-0 Packers. I mean, it was 3-0 at halftime. Then finally the Packers go up 10-0 and you're sort of like, well, with their defense, they should be golden. And then they have a bizarre drive that they kick a field goal on when they were at first and goal in the one at one point, and it's just like, oh, this is Browns football. What do you expect?
Yeah.
And then Love throws just a god awful interception, and it turns into a Browns touchdown. And then everything after that, with the blocked field goal and the field goal the other way, and that little throw by Flacco to get them in range, and it was a long kick. They end up winning the game on. Was it like 55 yards they end up making? Yeah, 55 yarder. So it was cinema from that point forward, but it was really kind of a snoozer before that. I can't say I was watching it. Uh, I was just had red zone on, so I wasn't seeing play to play. But I was surprised at how close it had been the whole time, and it was kind of the lesson of letting team hang around a little bit.
Yep. And so that was crazy. And that was part of a Sunday slate that had so much chaos going on, so many fumbles, so many defensive touchdowns, so many special teams touchdowns. And I have to say, how on earth did the Rams blow that game to the Eagles up 26-7, and the Eagles work their way back, block two different field goals to win the game? I, for one, was disgusted.
Yeah, I mean, two field goal blocked. Like, come on, man. That's just you'd be sick if you're a Rams fan right now. Especially you're 2-0 at that point, about to go to 3-0 on the season, and then you have that happen. Just some teams that we expect to be in the playoff picture handed away some wins this weekend. It was just bizarre day with all of the special teams incidents around the league and the defensive touchdowns. Crazy week in fantasy for the DST category.
Yeah. Also, a near comeback that resulted in one of the funniest moments of the season, where Aaron Glenn breaks out the funniest dance on the sideline after the Jets take the lead, only to lose the game moments later. That was a rookie head coach getting a little too into the emotions of a game, but I'm so grateful for it because that was so funny to watch.
There was the someone set the clip to Earth, Wind, and Fire September, and it was synced up really well. So shout out to whoever put that together. I mean, at this point, I kind of feel optimistic a little bit about Aaron Glenn. I mean, beyond the general pessimism that has to come with being the head coach of the New York Jets, and just like the general sense of doom that comes with that job. But through 3 weeks, they almost beat the Steelers. They almost beat the Buccaneers. Those are two solid teams to be in competitive games with. I believe he has a Monday night game this week against.
Yeah, are you ready for the 0-3 Dolphins and 0-3 Jets on Monday Night Football? Who's ready for that
Woof.
disaster?
Well, that's a double header night, right? They have a because that game's on at like 7:15, so there has to be a
Yeah.
late game.
Oh, sorry. Would you rather watch the Cincinnati Bengals take on the Denver Broncos? If Joe Burrow is healthy, yeah. But
Woof.
woof. It'll be
Yeah. So
such glorious disaster.
as a whole, not too bad from Glenn, and hopefully he can get some some wins in that game against Miami, and then I think they play Dallas the week after that, and then the Panthers. So there's he should get on the board as a head coach here coming up. At the very least, it seems like the players are playing hard for him, which is something I never really doubted.
Yeah. Also should shout out, speaking of the Bengals, they get walloped by the Vikings. Isaiah Rodgers with the craziest first half a single defensive player has probably ever had, with a pick six, a forced fumble that he recovered for a touchdown, and then another forced fumble all in one half. That
He
is
got a
a
99.9 grade on PFF, if you saw that, the highest
the
grade they
first
ever
ever,
handed out. Yep.
which honestly, I don't know how much it's the coverage or just the turnovers and touchdowns, but still got it. I'm assuming the touchdowns kind of inflate your grade to a crazy disproportionate degree that it kind of works out to where he probably was just doing an average job, but then those plays are so insane that they spike his grade.
Probably. I don't think there's a particularly mathematical formula to it. Certainly not when the interns in Mongolia that they have grading like FCS games in college football. There's probably not a lot of science going on there,
Fair enough.
especially because they spit those grades out like a couple hours after the game, which is the first
Yeah.
sign that it's a little hokey. But whatever, it's a useful resource that has to be taken with a grain of salt. But it is what it is. The other thing I wanted to note: Houston Texans
Suck.
panic time. How are we feeling?
Um, so coming out of college, I I was like, oh, CJ Stroud is like a mobile version of Jared Goff. And then that first year, I was like, wow, he's even better than Jared Goff. And then the last 2 years, I'm like, wow, this is 2021 Jared Goff, but worse.
Yeah, it's been interesting. If you saw the people were recirculating that clip of when he was talking to Caleb Williams like he was a first ballot Hall of Famer after the Bears game last year on the Sunday night game. And like I let me pull these stats up, but since that time, it has really been a fall for just his kind of reputation and his caliber of play. 19 touchdowns to 15 interceptions at under 7 yards an attempt, 8-10 record in the regular season since that moment. So
That's not good. So the Texans are a very unique team because they don't have any running backs. Because Joe Mixon is just MIA with a undisclosed. We think it's like a foot ankle thing, but we have no idea what it is. We have no idea how long he's going to be out. They also have no offensive line, so you have no running backs, no offensive line, which leaves you with a quarterback. Tank Dell is injured, so you have a quarterback and one wide receiver. Now, granted, Nico Collins is very good. Not when he doesn't get the ball because CJ Stroud is just under fire every play. That it's such a shame too because that defense is legit and that offense is so bad. It's they're just
it
wasting it.
it's a little bit of a pickle with Stroud now, where he clearly doesn't have the tools he needs to succeed, but we're rounding the turn to him getting a big contract, which will then make it harder to get the tools he needs to succeed. And so they kind of feel like they have to draft their way out of this, which will take time. And that's the difficult part. So right now,
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts, juggernauts, AFC South in the bag,
Who's beating them? They
Jaguars.
like the answer is whoever they play in the wild card round, but man, the Colts, Jonathan Taylor looks like the best running back in football right now. Daniel Jones looks like the second Baker Mayfield experiment gone right here, like reclamation project gone right. That's just been, I don't even know, man. That division, what I would give for that to be the Lions division every year. The Lions would go 14-3 every single year just because they'd be guaranteed 6 wins.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
yeah.
it would be nice. My other thought from the weekend: did you see any of the Falcons Panthers game? What
I
happened?
saw I saw enough to know that the Falcons have a quarterback problem. A very bad quarterback problem. Because if you go back, like when the Falcons beat the Vikings, they did not need to throw the football. It was Bijan and the defense. So basically, when Bijan is going, the Falcons win. Or when the defense is going, the Falcons can win. when they have to throw the ball and actually play like a normal team, they are cooked because Michael Penix, oh boy, not good.
It really feels like through this many games of the season, 3 games, plus last year, so that's 20 games. That 2024 quarterback class just feels really unsettled right now. Like, I don't know how I feel about a lot of them. I think I like Drake May, but I'm not entirely sure. And then Caleb, Nix,
Uh, uh,
JJ, Penix.
uh,
I don't. Very murky right now. I'm
Certainly seems
curious
like
to see
there could be some
curious to see what the
starters.
next 14 games hold for these guys because it's going to be interesting.
Certainly seems like we are going to have zero superstars of that group for sure. So unless Caleb somehow, we should mention Ben Johnson. Congrats on his first
Yep.
win. That Dallas defense sucks. That a defense sucks when DeAndre Swift on a flea flicker throws the ball like 30 feet in the air. It gets back to Caleb like 3 seconds late, and Luther Burden is still 20 yards open. Like that was the worst executed flea flicker that still worked out so well I've ever seen. Caleb is like Caleb's on pace for like 40 touchdown passes right now, which is hilarious. Obviously, he won't get there, but he looks fine. Bears offense looks fine against a bad team. We'll see what they could do against some other opponents, but eh,
Cowboys come to town on December 4th.
buy tickets now so you can watch the Lions drop 75 points.
Do the Lions surpass last year's point total against Dallas?
Oh, it really entirely depends on how many turnovers Dak throws because part of the reason the Lions put up that many points is the turnovers that
Yep.
the defense generated. So, ooh, I'm gonna say lower because it's easy to say lower, but it won't be by much. He'll probably sitting here right now. I'm probably charting that for a 40 bomb.
Sounds about right to me.
I mean, they might run for 300 yards. They might. That's a if there was ever a time for JMO to have a true Randy Moss stat line of like 3 for 203, that would be the game. That would be it.
It's just an interesting game because we know that the Lions can put up these huge scores, but also we know that Dan has a certain vendetta against the Cowboys, and there was definitely vengeance in that game last year, especially after the skipper fiasco in the previous season. So, they will not hold back in that game.
I don't think we will see a hook and ladder to Penei Sewell. I'll tell you that. Although at some point in his career, we need a Penei Sewell touchdown. Just for the good of Lions fans everywhere, we need it. But
The other thing I should note real quick in the 2024 quarterback conversation, I left Jaden Daniels out of that because he's not really
oh
necessarily
yeah,
in that
sorry,
group
he's
to
the
me.
superstar.
It's not the book isn't closed on him, but he's not in the same like murkiness I feel like with all those other guys. But he could regress. CJ Stroud seemingly has. You never know. He's also injured right now. Shout out to
Yeah.
Marcus Mariota for winning a game this weekend. But
Shout
we'll
out to the
we'll check
Raiders for being horrible.
we'll check back in on Jaden in a couple months.
I should have meant that. Jaden was a superstar last year. He just has to keep that play up, and he could be a superstar. I kind of forgot that he was part of that class because he's so far beyond all those other
Yeah.
guys that it's like it kind of seems like he's been in the league for like 4 years, but he's this is his second. It's his second year. Speaking of Bo Nix, the Chargers beat the Broncos on a last second field goal. The Broncos have managed to blow 2 games in a row. At the very end, tough sight for them, but oh well. And the
Hey,
Chiefs.
shout out to the Chargers. They are 3-0. We have a really easy schedule we talked about last week. Keep it going.
Still
Finally
got to win those
dethrone
games.
the Chiefs in the AFC West.
Yeah.
It'll be crazy that one of Baltimore or Kansas City will be 1-3 after this week.
Baltimore, you got to do the world a service. The Lions will try to do a service in week 6, and let's get the Chiefs to 4 losses before week 7. Like the NFL community, because the let's be honest, the Chiefs will beat Jacksonville in week 5, but if the Ravens and Lions can take care of business, Chiefs could be 2-4, and that'd be a very glorious sight. Speaking of that Sunday night game, Chiefs win 22-9. Russell Wilson is beyond cooked. I've never seen a player play himself out of the Hall of Fame the way Russell Wilson has. It's incredible.
It's just sad. Like we don't need to see this anymore. To get this guy off the screen,
And we
let's
are. Jackson Dart is your new starter of the New York Giants. They've seen enough after 3 weeks. And this is the classic, like, where oh, we're going to draft a rookie quarterback, but we're not going to play him. We're going to sit him. And it's all fun and games until you're 0-3 and suddenly your job is in jeopardy. It's like, well, if I don't trust something now, I might get fired. I would have put Jameis Winston in first because at least Jameis will be fun and you can keep protecting Dart because you played the Chargers this week who have been very good. You play, I guess you got the Saints in week 5, but then you got the Eagles and Broncos and Eagles again. Oh, you got the Eagles twice in 3 weeks. Have fun with that one, Jackson Dart.
yeah, I just hate how the New York teams have to get these primetime games that we are then forced to watch. And it's just brutal stuff, man. Like, honestly, I would rather watch the Titans play. Like, at least I get to see the number one overall pick play. What are we gaining from watching the Giants?
No, yeah, I have no idea. So let's stop giving them any spotlight. Let's focus on the Lions, who now have to take on a Cleveland Browns team that is coming off a win, and they are very weird because they are simultaneously so good on defense, top three defense, arguably the number one defense in all of football right now, and they are equally as horrible on the offensive side of the ball. What do we make of this matchup? And the Lions 9.5 point favorites, over unders 44 and a half. I don't think we're going to get to 44 points between these two teams.
Well, I kind of like that the Lions are playing the Browns right after they beat the Packers. I think that's going to make it so the Lions aren't taking this game, unseriously, right? They're going to focus on this game. They're going to be prepared and ready to play. It's a short week, so it can always be a bit of a grind, but this is a home game against a team that you should be able to beat. But the Browns have proven themselves to be pretty frisky. The game against the Ravens, they were pretty bad with the turnovers that turned it into a lopsided score, but the actual the game on paper was a lot closer than that. Should be a low scoring game. That is the biggest takeaway. And the matchup between the Lions offensive line against the Browns defensive line is going to be really interesting, a really good test after a couple positive weeks for this offensive line.
We probably won't actually get this best on best between Myles Garrett and Penei Sewell because why would you put the elite edge rusher on Penei Sewell when you could put him on the guy that's not quite as good and Taylor Decker? But that'll be like keeping Myles Garrett in check is going to be fascinating. Mason Graham, first round pick out of
Yep.
Michigan. That'll be fascinating. He had a great week last week as well. I there was such a weird inconsistency between the different platforms charting the pressure rates. Like it was ESPN or someone charted Mason Graham at like a 49% pass rush win rate, and then another metric had him at like a 12%. It was the biggest discrepancy I've ever seen, but he's good. He was drafted, what was it, like sixth or something?
I've been fourth. Something. It was really high.
It was
It was
high.
it was the first. Yeah, it was first few picks.
So he's very good. Compliment Myles Garrett over there. They've got a very good defense. They've got good secondary. They're just good at everything, honestly.
Yeah, I mean this is a really good unit, and it's going to be a test for the Lions in a lot of different ways. But the Lions have so many weapons, and I think that the Lions are generally probably better suited to not have the sort of dips that the Packers had in that game. Like I think the Lions just they have so much sort of continuity, and it just kind of works in tandem. This is also an interesting matchup because this is the first time we've seen Jim Schwartz with the Browns, right? He'll be coming back to
Yeah,
Detroit.
because he wouldn't have been there. Well, he wouldn't have been there when the Lions played the Browns in 2021 or two
No,
one.
he was in Tennessee back then.
So
We
yeah, been a
we
while.
faced him a few times at different places, right? He was with Buffalo when they beat us in 14 in the Alex Henry game where they carried him off the field, and then he was in Philly when they came to town in 16 in one of those comeback games.
That was Carson Wentz's first loss as a pro.
Yep. And then now he comes to town with the Browns. Great defensive coordinator. Wasn't a very good head coach, but an elite defensive coordinator.
So that'll be a fascinating matchup. True best on best here. The Lions are, I don't know if the Lions are first in points. They're tied for second in points for per game so far with 34 and a half, or point 0.3, sorry. And the Browns are averaging 15.3, less than half of what the Lions have been averaging. But on the flip side, their defense has given up 22.7, which is 18th, but it's skewed by that Ravens game. First in total yards, fourth in passing yards, first in rushing yards. The Browns are only giving up 57.3 on the ground per game. That's going to be a real test. On the other side of the ball, the Browns are without a tackle, which makes it even harder for them. This needs to be a game where the Lions defense really shows out and shuts down a team that they are very capable of shutting down.
Yeah, and we know that the Lions try to be opportunistic. They want to force turnovers, have a high havoc rate, all that stuff. Flacco's already thrown 4 picks this season, so there should be opportunities for that. As you mentioned earlier, not a mobile quarterback, so there's no real concern there. Quinshon Judkins, the rookie running back out of Ohio State, has looked pretty good so far, from what I can tell, rushing for 5.5 yards per carry. I've seen some people say some nice things about him and also their rookie tight end, Harold Fannin. He was a favorite of mine at Bowling Green, has been already a pretty good producer for them. 15 receptions leads their team. So young guys showing out, but there's just not a ton beyond that. And the quarterback situation is so grim that the Lions need to win this game.
Oh yeah. Like we saw like obviously the Packers lost and the Packers are a good team. The Lions obviously got killed by them in week 1. So good teams lose to bad teams all the time. You got to take care of business here because the Lions schedule is so difficult that you have to take advantage of these opportunities when you get them. The next 2 weeks against Cleveland and Cincinnati, if the Lions are anything less than 4-1 through 5 weeks, I'm going to be upset because that would mean that there's been a massive missed opportunity in there.
Yeah, I mean this is a huge opportunity to get a couple wins before you go into Arrowhead and really just get it rolling and make it a nice stress-free Sunday. That would be appreciated.
Yep. So back in the 1 o'clock Eastern slate, hopefully you take care of business and we get to 3-1. Hopefully Dallas can pull off a miracle against Green Bay or something and really do us a favor, but I doubt it. If I was a betting man, I'm putting my rent on Micah Parsons to get 2+ sacks against the Cowboys there. That seems like a free money bet. But aside from that, is there anything else that you want to mention before we wrap up this episode?
No, not particularly. Just that when you mentioned the 1 o'clock window, this is the last time Lions will be on the 1 o'clock window for a long time. I think until the start of November when they play the Minnesota 4 o'clock game, then a couple prime time, then a bye week. So enjoy it while it lasts, and we won't see it again for a little bit.
I mean, yeah, the Lions only play in the 1 o'clock window one, two, three, four more times the rest of the season, and then obviously they play on Thanksgiving. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So that's the not a lot of 1 o'clock games. So if you enjoy the kind of normal routine, enjoy while it's here. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe if you're over there. Follow and leave us a review if you're on podcasting platforms. Again, you can find the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain. You can find me at ZachPayne41, Alex at Alex_Drain, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone. Cheers.